to collaborate and speak, kind of like that lunch AMA. I think that format works better for what we're looking for engineering office hours. So you can see there's a bunch of people already gathered there. I'll post this in the stage chat and in general. So hop down there, please, if you want to join us for engineering office hours. I'll stay here just to continue to let people know.
Now recording.
Who's recording?
Oh, that was cool. Must be Craig.
That was creepy.
Why is he recording us?
Because he's a bot.
Oh.
So
That's
you
what he's
can't
supposed to
claim
do.
You didn't say something, Major A's.
Right.
I think it's just, it goes in the recorded meeting channel.
Well, it's not really a meeting. This is just open. If you're working on something for ShapeShift DAO, if you're working on a bounty, if you're working on a PR, got some questions, just chime in and ask your question. That's all we're here for. So this is just open conversation. You don't need to raise your hand. Just unmute and start talking. And if we don't like you, we'll just force mute you.
I was going to second what Major Hayes was saying there until the last sentence.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not a moderator anyway, so.
But yeah, this is definitely meant to be community centric and driven. I see we got quite a few people pouring in. We talked a little about sort of a wallet redesign during the product roadmap. We've been working on that a bit amongst ourselves since, so that's absolutely fair game. We can chat more about that. Or, I mean, I'd like to just initially open it up for any community member that's here that has a topic or a question or criticism or whatever you might have for us.
Specifically engineering related, preferably.
Yes, engineering. Not everyone at once.
I want to know when I can show off my my Rust keep proof of concept.
Wednesday.
Yeah, that's a demo.
Sweet.
Demos are Wednesday at what time?
10 a.m. Mountain.
Is it 10 a.m. Mountain?
Yes, we made this one in the afternoon, so they would be at different times, cover more of the globe.
Right. So is there anyone doing any work on any of the ShapeShift open source projects that would like to ask any questions? Or someone who wants to work on it that would like to ask some questions?
Does anybody know what perp is, and could they describe it? Like, there's a bounty for perp, right? Perpetuals.
Perp?
Yeah, there was a 6-figure bounty.
Yeah, it's another protocol. I'm forgetting the
Highlander, it's a derivatives trading platform. So if you want to go like 10x long or you want to short stuff, that's what they
so
specialize in.
we could 10x in the app at the end of this. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, they have a few different ways you can do different types of derivative trading than just the normal, markets and takers and stuff like that.
And this is ETH only. Did you hear? This is just Ethereum?
I think it's got to be.
Yes, it does. It says, moreover, Perpetual Protocol is simply a collection of programs running on ETH. So I found an article from Kraken that talks about it. I can post it.
How to get wrecked without giving up custody.
I like you. Send a 0000 and you're good. Like. One of the original.
Yeah, but it sounds like implementation-wise, it would be swapper like Thorchain or 0x with some additional capabilities around leverage.
Yeah, it's really going to be the UI that would be like the most stuff you have to do to give people the options of how they want to set up that type of trade. Just so, because you can obviously customize how much you want to leverage out. So I don't want to downplay what would be needed in Swapper, but I think it would be a little bit more UI intensive.
Is there a service that already has this integrated that I could see and like use it?
I think that's what Kraken's using.
I don't want to sign up for Kraken though.
Yeah.
Do you have to KYC?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to wait 3 days after your first deposit to withdraw anything ever. Same thing on Binance. It's like 10 days though.
Last time I used them, I didn't have to KYC.
And I need Monero to pay my VPN bill. I can't get any.
The coolest thing about the DAO is things like perps could be funded, and we didn't have to go talk to legal and be told no. Like this,
I'm just waiting for somebody to come up with the ShapeShift Alexa integration to make true Willie's, Alexa ape into pickle, statement.
Highlander, I just pinged you in general with the link to the Perps project they're integrated with so far. There's only like 5 or 6 of them. It's not a huge one, but you should be able to find something there you can play around with.
Yeah, let's see something not KYC. Cool.
And they have their own app, so you could just go to like the Perp website and just click their app button, and it brings you to their own exchange they have.
The perp terminal sounds like something in the cops police station.
Well, since no one seems to be bringing up any specific technical questions, does anyone want to continue our open wallet discussion now that we've got some community members that might want to provide some input?
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, so I shared that very in progress diagram.
There we go. So having looked a little bit at Xchain, and obviously not a lot, to me it seems like the project is decently old, like a year old, it looks like.
Yeah, it was made just for Thorchain, and Thorchain just launched, but it's been in some sort of development for 3 years. That 3 years,
Okay.
Thorchain's been in development, but it was
Does
like an
more
test.
Yeah, so I guess part of my thing is like, is this an opportunity for us to kind of learn the lessons from their 3 years and try to create a little better of an interface and maybe work with them to migrate over to something a little cleaner?
One of the important lessons there is the distinction between different assets on different chains. Like you can't just tag something BNB, or whatever, because it might be on a different chain.
Wait, define tag something BNB?
Well,
It's a symbol. You're talking about not using symbols.
Yeah, like you can't just call your asset like BTC or whatever.
Yeah, I know that.
BTC or it might be ETH whatever. Or Thor dot.
Yeah, I think we've definitely decided that we want to have some common interface, right, for uniquely identifying an asset. We had talked earlier about having some sort of kind of deterministic method, right, where you take like something about the chain, something about whatever contract address, kind of a couple different pieces, and like that becomes some deterministic unique ID. And we could hopefully publish that as some sort of standard and say like, look, this is, this is kind of standard. If this unique ID gets shared anywhere, then everyone can kind of figure out what it is.
Does anyone know offhand where that proposed asset format that Mike had put together is? Maybe we should look at that, peek at it quick, and see if we're speaking the same language, Mr. Nerdhair.
Yeah, it was in the Notion. We had our own in I think it was the centralized Notion.
Let me Google it in Notion. That's
Mike,
terrible.
if you're talking, we can't hear you. I see you're unmuted.
I was going to say search for asset ID.
In Notion, in the old Notion.
Yep.
It doesn't help if I type the word Notion into Notion.
And it's in the RFC section, Adam.
Okay.
All right, yeah, asset ID standard. Mr. Narrator, did you say that someone else had already also tried to define a standard
Do you
like
want-
this? I
Yeah,
can
why don't you
share
share it too? Major Hayes, if you got it there.
freaking vertical monitors. Okay, let's close that one. All right, let's see if I can figure out how to do this.
Linux problems.
I know, yeah. Well, and I use i3, which is a tiling window manager, so I can't just like make the window any size. It has to be formatted based on the monitor size and everything.
Load it.
Yeah.
Don't-
Whatever.
Don't get me wrong, Linux is the best OS of all time.
Of all time. Yeah. So here was kind of the thing that Mike came up with. Mike, do you want to go into detail about what because you and I talked about it, but then you actually wrote it up.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a high level overview. Like the basic idea is to try and come up with a standard that's deterministic, where if you start with things like the chain, the network, the contract address, that anyone that's using this standard can come up with the same asset identifier. So like most importantly, not only using the symbol like we used to do on the old platform, right? Because we know that the symbol's not unique. So you need some combination of fields that is always unique. And the main ones, just kind of starting at the top of the hierarchy, is again like the chain and the network. So for example, Bitcoin mainnet or Bitcoin testnet, Ethereum mainnet, and then we have a lot of ERC20 tokens, right? So to uniquely identify that, you can use the contract address versus the symbol. I have some examples.
Ooh, what's
in here.
type? Type looks new to me.
Yeah,
Contract type?
Contract type. Yeah. I'm not
Oh,
sure
yeah, okay.
exactly- we
That
don't
seem like we
necessarily-
wouldn't need it, right? And
Yeah,
that
I
would
think
be
you're
just
right.
ETH specific.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
the other, I mean, thinking about cross chain, do other chains have distinctions like that?
Yeah, but I would just like leave it as call it identifier or something like that. So yeah, like BNB has tokens, similar concept, but not obviously not an ERC20 or a 721. But on the other hand, Binance does have like BEP2s and 20s, but I don't know if it's useful to encode that in the identifier.
Well,
I
and
agree, because I think
is
if
one of the
you have-
requirements of this?
Hold on, let's hear
Sorry.
Mike quick.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to give it to him.
So if you have the contract address, you can read the contract and get the type out of it as well as the symbol out of it. So I agree that maybe those are not necessary as part of the standard. They're more like supplementary information.
Well, that's for ETH specifically, though. Is that the case for any chain that's got any sort of token support?
That I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
Like,
So is there going to be a case where a chain has tokens hosted on it that can't be identified with a string? It can't be uniquely identified inside of that chain or network with a string, such as a contract address or a random unique identifier or something like that. Because as long as we can cover that with a single field, then it's just what we name it.
Yeah.
well,
so
what
I
are
think-
some that we know of?
So I think on Binance, the BEP20 standard also has an address for the contract. So at least in that one specific case, like an address should also work for BEP20s. But we should probably look at some, things like Cosmos, Solana, and see how they do it, and see if that model continues.
So
So
I think Cosmos has like a name, like an arbitrary token name, right? Solana,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure offhand.
I agree that we want to have like the least number of things that are necessary, but it also needs to be, cross-chain. The other question I want to know is like the way this is written right now. It seems like it's designed to be parsable, right? In other words, you can write a parser that can pull this out and like split it based on the period and kind of like figure out what all the pieces are and kind of construct something out of that versus like taking this and then like hashing it and making some unique like 8 or 12 character, hash thing. Is that something that it seems to me like that would be useful?
You could, it just gets restrictive on the character set you can support in the field.
So it would be useful to be able to, for example, get a piece of information from a remote API in a serialized form, and then the parsing could tell you, okay, this has to do with this particular chain, and so you could know that you could use that type of chain adapter or whatever. I do see this is a good thing. I think it's not quite as good as CAIP 19. I see a couple of things that they've
Let's see. CAIP 19.
Yeah, I don't see if that works. Yeah, okay, number 2 there. So, for example, one distinction that is important that proposed the format on our Notion doesn't pick up is that SLIP 44 doesn't define all chains. It defines different types of key, but there are different chains that use the same kind of key. For example, like all the Ethereum ones use 60 prime. Another thing is
all the Ethereum ones. You mean like forks of Ethereum, or
No,
yeah, like
asset.
Ethereum Classic uses the same key path as Ethereum. It's the same key. It's just capitalized differently because the checksum thing is different.
Sorry, you cut out at the beginning.
Does that go into tokens at all? Oh.
Sorry, I missed the last part of your question there, Adam.
I was just, so does that even go into or attempt tokens at all? Like how do the SLIP, what is it, 44, whichever one lists, like enumerates identifiers like 0 and 60 and
does not
84.
go into tokens. It's supposed to be, so SLIP 44 is for distinguishing between key pairs. And the idea is that you'll have a different key pair per chain, but there's no notion that you would have a different key pair per token per chain. So it doesn't go into it.
Right. But so what I'm getting at is there is another list, like asset list, SLIP. So maybe I'm saying the wrong one there.
Someone unmuted.
Yeah, I left or got kicked or something.
Okay.
So
it was a good interlude, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the idea was that like token, at least in ours, token was a separate part of it, right? So you have the same chain ID, but with a different token ID.
CAIP covers that. So they cover it here under that asset reference field. So the chain ID refers to CAIP 2, which defines the individual chains. And makes a distinction between, for example, Ethereum mainnet or Ethereum Classic or whatever. The asset namespace here is essentially the equivalent to like the contract on Ethereum, or the like rune-B1A or whatever on BNB, whatever ID that particular chain uses to disambiguate between the various types of token. And then the asset reference that comes into play for like NFTs. So if you have a single contract, it can have a whole bunch of NFTs, but they're all individual distinct assets, which may have some supply set.
Yeah. So way back in the day, we were looking at slip 44 and the list there as a source of information in a similar conversation to the one we're having today. But then you do have to get into token level stuff for applications. Obviously not if we're just talking keys and signing and such.
The other thing I noted about the Notion thing is it includes a symbol, and the symbol is you can't trust it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it would work great for something, you know, to be used within a centralized company where, you know, somebody can keep an Excel spreadsheet that says what everything is or something. But, you know, I could spin up a contract that returns USDC as the symbol, and, you know, that doesn't mean, you know.
Yeah, but
100% agreed. Symbol is an attribute of an asset. That's all you can ever think of it as. You can never count on it for uniqueness.
So in this example down here at the bottom, this is referencing to a specific NFT, not the collectible contract itself, but the individual item.
Right. So you have to know it's EIP 155 chain number 1 in order to know which blockchain chain to talk to. That's Ethereum mainnet. You have to know it's ERC 721 to know which ABI to use to talk to the contract. Then the contract address, and then the asset ID that you have to feed into the you know, get balance functions and stuff to figure out who owns it. There's 721. There's also some other number I can't remember that is like a like a standard for a single contract to control multiple different types of fungible tokens. So, you know, you wouldn't have to deploy individual different tokens to you know, have like 5 different kinds. They could all be on one contract. There's a specific there's a thing for that in here too somewhere. This is the generalized specification document. If you go up to the root of this repository, you'll see the index of all the ones they have, which includes the specifics for the various blockchains. Up one more. It's in the README.
Yeah, no, I was looking at this one because the previous one mentioned this one.
Gotcha.
So I like this in that it's extensible and future thinking, right? That it's path oriented. So some chain that doesn't exist yet has something along the lines of CryptoKitties that we can't even conceive of yet, that has differing, you know, multiplicities of children or levels of specification to it. This would support that down the road. Is that right?
I believe so. It does lack a couple of things that we support. Like there's not a, it doesn't do anything for FIO, for example. Well, we could probably
as far
fix
as naming.
That. Yeah, like there's a reference for EOSIO in general, but nothing for FIO specifically. So we couldn't refer to a specific FIO name. But on the other hand, this is a project that is run, you know, to solve these problems, and I'm sure they would welcome a PR to fix that if we decided we really care about FIO enough to bother with all that.
Why couldn't you do a FIO name?
Well, I'm just saying there's not a spec for how to refer to things in the FIO namespace. So like CAIP 7, that tells you how to refer to FIO as a blockchain, but it doesn't tell you how to refer to individual assets on the FIO chain.
Gotcha. Nothing to stop that from being extended to do so, though.
Yeah. So you can see under like asset reference for ERC 721 or something like that, you can see that the specifications for the individual asset definitions, I mean, it's fairly trivial to figure out. It's just, you know, it has to be specified somewhere.
Got it. Well, I mean, my preference would certainly be to go with something where someone has put a lot more thought into it. I mean, we identified the need and we kind of came up with a couple ideas about it, but it looks like this one has had a lot more thought put into it. And of course, My preference would be to go for something like this, where we can say we're using,
Yeah.
we're what's the word? Signing on to like this as the open standard. We believe that this is the way to go.
Me too. And the fact it's just sort of gravy on top. The fact that you have to do this anyway to make Wallet Connect 2.0 work. So, as long as we're gonna do it, let's just make our lives easier.
Cool.
So Wallet Connect
Hey,
2 uses this standard.
Yeah. So like when you make calls to sign a particular thing or whatever, you have to pass in. You have to specify what blockchain you want to operate on. That sort of thing. And this is how you do it. That's how I found this in the first place, which I was just blown away by how good it is and useful and such.
Hey, I was just gonna say, so we're at like 3:30. I see we've had a fair number of new faces filter in since we kicked off here and opened up for questions or other topics that anyone in the community wants to raise. So maybe we just pause here and give another opportunity for that. It can be questions, ideas, criticisms, requests to join engineering, anything that comes to mind. No hand raising required. Okay, I guess we just
I hope
proceed.
people have more questions in the security office hour.
Cool. Yeah, I guess we proceed then. If anyone thinks of anything, you can interrupt or DM me, and we'll pause to shift directions a little.
Adam, what's your perfect Sunday?
My perfect Sunday?
Yeah, that's not engineering related, Matt. Sorry about
It could
that.
be.
Hey,
You could be
hey,
doing
hey,
engineering stuff on a
yes.
Sunday.
I could probably go do some snowboarding in the morning, motorcycle to the drop zone, and do some skydiving in the afternoon. Have some drinks.
Can I wrap all three of your
Sit by a
adrenaline
fire.
hobbies into one day?
How about you, Matt?
Well, right now, football season's back, so I just don't leave my couch.
Those are easy Sundays. Cool. So it sounds like we got pretty good consensus on pursuing this standard format.
Yeah, I think this is really cool. It's a good find.
Who's blowing their nose?
I thought it was you, Major Hayes.
Nope, not me.
I think it's Emmy.
It's
It's disco.
I thought it was a Teletubby.
It sounds like it.
How come I don't have server mute on this one? It's a permissions thing.
I wonder if we could default to muted. I guess we could force push to talk. I've seen that.
It's been fine so far. There was one interlude of some hip hop and some snoring or nose blowing there.
It's just the nature of the future.
I thought that Future and Drake song sounded good.
All right, I'm about to long Bitcoin on this perpetual app. Send it.
Good luck with that. Well, I'm not hearing anyone chiming in. Do we want to? I mean, I think we're done with the cap or cape. How do you pronounce that?
CAIP. I just always spell it out in my head.
Cape. So cape. Cape. I think we're done with that conversation, but we could certainly go back to just the wallet interface discussion.
Let's see. So I think that XChain, to the extent that XChain isn't the ideal implementation of the, what we have written down as a chain client, we should fix that. Contribute that upstream and then just use them for chain client. Have wallet dispatch off to various clients based on type inference from the new fancy strongly typed addresses and asset IDs and so forth that we just talked about.
I'd rather at this point stay away from implementation details and just define the interface. We're starting from scratch. These are the how would we build it, and then once we've kind of got an idea of what we think would be the perfect, quote unquote, perfect design, then we can go and see, can we, how would we implement that? Could we bring something else in? Could we shoehorn something else in? Could we, commit upstream, whatever? But it's kind of like when I was working with the guys the other day with some stuff in lib, it was now that you've built one, rather than trying to extend it, let's just start from scratch. How would you design this from scratch? And then we kind of went and pulled in pieces of what they had done before, right? But we kind of ignored that during the design phase, as far as not trying to make it fit a pre-existing design. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's not to say that we shouldn't talk about XChain at some point, but for now, I think I'd like to just talk about knowing what we know now, how would we build it from the ground up if we were to do it?
And that approach worked really well for lib so far, I think. Use our existing stuff as a reference implementation.
Yeah. So, Adam, can you share that diagram again?
Yep. One sec. Just carrying on in a chat here.
Oh, that's fine. Or if you have a link to it, I don't know if you've shared that with anybody.
Oh yeah, I have. Is DeFi here? I thought he had shared it in public chat or somewhere.
Was it?
Yeah, let me dig that up.
Or I can send it to you quick.
Yep.
Yeah, DeFi, do you want to just share if you've got it?
I haven't got it on hand, but I can dig it up.
Oh, okay.
I think I got it here.
So at the top level right now, what we call SDK is basically the keyring, which is just an array of wallet, right? An array of wallets that you can talk to, and you can say, "Give me one," right, to go talk to. Do we have any? Reed, have you had Mr. Nerdhair? Sorry, have you had time to give that some thought? About what, because I kind of like the idea of that being the top level being a very simple interface, right? And just being kind of because I guess one of the goals that I see is it's like a wallet of wallets, right? And we want to be able to interface with any key management thing. And we want someone to be able to load the ShapeShift wallet and immediately gain access to any other type of key store without having to know the specifics about how that user is managing their keys, right?
So I had a couple insights there. One is that the way that we've handled it in HD Wallet is that every wallet has an ID, or at least theoretically every wallet has an ID.
Wallet instance?
Well, not the wallet instance itself
The
necessarily.
device, what we call device.
Well,
Well, that
more
would be an instance. I'm
more
talking about
fundamentally,
versus keep key versus ledger, keep key 1, ledger 2.
we have this
You're
key ring
talking
class,
about, yep.
and the key ring class indexes things by a string, and that string is obvious in some cases, mostly the hardware wallet cases where you can pull a serial, but it's not obvious in other cases. Like, for example, whenever we use a native wallet, the device ID is the word native, which, obviously sucks.
Well, that's
not true,
that's
is
actually-
it, Chris?
no, it's not true. But
It is
regardless, no, we use a hash in there. But that's kind of the point. Like Portis, for example, doesn't have a native ID. What we do for Portis is we go and we ask Portis for the ETH address and then do Portis : ETH address as the ID. So you're right in that this concept of ID isn't universal across different types of key management devices.
So I think we should do one of two things there. Either we should make the ID opaque, and if you want to use a particular, like if you want to talk to a particular keep key, that's fine. Make the wallet yourself. But if you should be able to look up a wallet that you previously, it should be a symbol or a GUID or something opaque. That's one approach. Another approach, which
before you move on too quickly to the second part, so let's just say you do like a UUID, and we're talking. I'm thinking about the serialized structure. Let me save it to disk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would have like an array, and it would have, or let's call it an object or a map, right? And you would have some random UUID, and then inside that would be, hey, this wallet, I guess, right? Is connected to like a keep key that has this device ID, blah, blah, blah. And so when we go to deserialize this, we go, oh, I'm making 5 wallets. Here's the 5 UUIDs that have nothing to do with any information that's on those key management devices, but I can use that uniquely in my application to identify the specific paired wallet. And then maybe from there, I can say wallet.getID if I need that specific piece of information.
Yeah, now I'm not even convinced.
Am I following you correctly?
Yes, essentially, yes. The device ID, where it is needed, should be the domain of the key manager or of the wallet.
I was just using that as an example. Yeah.
Now, more fundamentally, though, I'm not sure we need a way to look up wallet by ID at all. I mean, you have an array of wallets, and think about what the SDK is going to have to do when it is rehydrating, from storage. It's going to get a set of things, and it's going to have to make an instance of a particular type of wallet for each of the things that it finds that matches. But it's not like the SDK is going to be making a specific one with a specific GUID ID or something. So why even bother? Just use an array of wallet. I mean, even just a set doesn't have to be ordered at all. But
for the serialization, maybe, but from the application perspective, I want to say spend from keep key 1 or spend from native wallet 2.
Right.
So you don't want an array at that point or a set.
Well, you whichever wallets are, numbers 1 and 2, is essentially a UI question. And if you do need to look them up, well, you may not need to look them up, because if you're going to assign them a number, you already have a reference to the object to start with, right? So you're going to have to add it to the SDK to start with. So why bother? But the other option would just be to use a symbol type, so that it's always unique, and you could make the symbol type serialized to something useful, when you log it, but you would know that you wouldn't have any conflict between multiple wallets like adding two
Symbol
native
type.
wallets or something.
Are you talking about like symbol in JavaScript, that type?
Yeah.
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 I think that's not like that. That's kind of an implementation detail. I think the idea is that however we index, however we store them, we don't need to have a unique identifier from each wallet in order to persist them. Now, one of the things, now just to be clear, like when we talk about wallets here, my mind goes to how we do it in shapeshift.com, which is you can pair multiple wallets, but you may have none of them actively connected, right? So you may have 4 key keys that you have paired at some point. So when you hydrate, right, you'll get 4 key keys, but none of them may be plugged in. So I just want to make a distinction that when we're talking about wallets, we're not talking about devices which you're actively communicating with. It's just a device that we're aware of.
That is another important lesson learned I think we can bring in from XChain, which is that and they have not, it's a lesson learned in that they do it wrong. They have an object that has a state of locked and unlocked. And if you're going to do anything that's not, that actually interacts with the chain, it has to be unlocked or you'll throw an error. But that is not easily represented, at least in JavaScript, at the type level. So if you have the object, the custom in XChain, the way everyone uses it is to create the wallet, unlock it immediately, and never have to deal with the situation of whether or not your wallet is locked. Obviously, that's bad for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that we can't use it like, we want to with, your device unplugged.
And that concept may not be universal, nor may we be able to expose that function to the DApp, for example.
Yeah.
So keep key, for example, you can't ask a keep key if it's locked or not. All you can do is ping the keep key and say pin true, saying prompt me for a pin if you need one. And then it will emit the event that says I need a pin, but the device itself will wait for a pin. So you can't ping it and then go oh, I saw the event, so it must be locked. Because at that point, the device is well, give me the freaking pin, right? So
you can hack around it by canceling the operation when the pin screen comes up, but that's dumb and stupid. I've done it before. This sucks.
And so what I'm saying is I don't think we can rely on a state of locked or unlocked, right?
Right.
That's certainly not something. So one thing we did with native wallet is when you ask it to do something, if it can't do it, it throws an error saying I can't do that, and then raises an event that says you need to unlock me, right? And then at that point, you can have a separate thing that's oh, I need to go put the password in and decrypt it, blah, blah, blah. And then I can try my thing again. So in that case, it's kind of I try it, and if it doesn't work, try it again, right? Type situation.
So one thing I've noticed doing the work on XChain that I've done is that the set of functions that don't need your actual device to be connected or unlocked or whatever is pretty distinct from the set where you do have to have it connected and side transactions and so forth. So it might be worth putting those on 2 different objects. Essentially, your wallet might have, I'm just imagining here an unlock function, and that would return a promise for an object with the sign transaction or the transfer and the do actual stuff functions. And if the thing's already unlocked, that's great. Your promise gets resolved immediately. If it's not already unlocked, well, you can fire off whatever flow you might need behind the scenes before you resolve that promise.
So in native, we have a function that's called needs mnemonic, and you're essentially saying something along those lines where you say you check, do I need a mnemonic, or hey, I need to do something that needs a mnemonic. Let me know when you're ready. Now that I'm ready,
Yes,
go do
though,
my
though
thing.
I'm suggesting we don't do it exactly that way because needs mnemonic will throw if you don't have the mnemonic. I say we don't throw. I say we resolve a promise that doesn't resolve until the action is complete. If you
That
need
can
it
be
This
immediately,
sounds
though.
like we're getting like too much in details again.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you backing up a step, one thing that you talked about in the wallet was having a distinction between functions that need a private key and functions that do not. So if we look at like this wallet box here, we have like sign TX, get pub key, and get TX history and get balance. So the top two require a private key. The next two do not because they're just chain, right?
I don't think get pub key requires a private key either. At least not necessarily. And it might be worth, especially if we're intending on supporting hardware wallets.
Well, yeah, it doesn't for a hardware wallet for sure.
Well, the hardware wallet needs it to generate the pub key. The hardware wallet has it.
Has it already? Yeah, but it's not an API requirement in that scenario.
No, I just mean that if you call get pub key, it'll have to ask the key manager to give you back a pub key. It requires the key manager, right? So sign TX and get pub key require a key manager. The other two don't. And we were talking about initially, like just taking those two APIs and just making one API. It's like you can interact with all of these things under one wallet class, and you don't need to call like key manager.getPubKey or chain client.getTX history.
Yeah, exactly.
But you were suggesting that maybe we should make a distinction. And what do you mean by that?
I think that we should make a distinction between the things that need the key manager, don't, with the caveat that distinction shouldn't be, it shouldn't be like, or it should be, whatever. The point I was bringing up previously had to do with chain client specifically.
You broke up there for a sec, Reed.
The previous distinction I was trying to make was whether or not wallet or chain client. So for example, I was thinking, sign TX should be a per chain thing, which means it should go on chain client. But I also think it would be useful to have a distinction between the stuff that requires the key manager and the stuff that doesn't. So I guess that would end up being a per chain thing too. Yeah, because each chain client would have some public stuff. You can go fetch from the block explorer, like get TX history and get balance, and also some stuff you could do. So
that's really the more important distinction there, Reed. Like getting blockchain data for Bitcoin is the same, or likely exactly the same for any wallet implementation. So we want to separate that concern out and implement it once, and then have that available for any wallet implementation in the future to leverage. That's more important in my eyes than other reasons for like separating, like the diagram I have up on my screen as wallet and chain client separate. So I'm calling that chain client there instead of chain adapter, because I see that really as just the client to the online blockchain state.
I see what you're saying.
That's its job. And then we obviously want to be able to share that across any wallet implementation.
You're saying now about me getting distracted by the specific implementation detail of what we use for. That's making a little more sense now. So I do think that we should have now.
Here's my concern with the concept of like calling unlock, and then that returns you like an object that has sign TX or the other functions on it that allow you to talk to the private key. Is that not every wallet locks and unlocks the same way, right? And they may or may not. How do I say it? Like, it can be complicated, right? Like, we have an issue right now with HD Wallet where sometimes you talk to the key and the USB interface gets like locked and then it just gets like frozen, and then you get stuck where the code's like waiting for a promise to resolve that never resolves. You know, kind of issues like that. And then you have the whole thing of like the keep key like needs a pin, so you need to somehow like provide a modal, right? You need to like show, and they need to be able to interact with it. And then like the native wallet, you know, has some sort of password mechanism to like decrypt. Tortoise probably has some other thing where you like go to pop it up and you don't know if it's like, I don't even know if there's a way to tell if it's logged in or not. That, and who knows about MetaMask and stuff. So
we leverage event emitters to handle a lot of that, or
Well,
would we leverage observables or event emitters in like going forward here?
So
I'm actually changing. Sorry, I'm changing the topic a little bit on this, away from what we were talking about before, because I kind of want to answer this question because I don't know how.
Okay.
This library to me doesn't feel like something that should display UI elements. In other words,
no.
Or should it? I guess is my question. Like, so if the keep key needs a pin, what happens at that point? Does this
it emits an
library,
event like saying I need a pin, and we listen. The client listens for that event. That client would be the V2 open source web at this point.
So I'm not
to support. Well, hold on.
Sorry?
In order to support keep key, then whoever's implementing this needs to know the entire keep key interface, because the way the pin prompt works is it's scrambled, and so you have to send coordinates in a specific way, and like now you have to build a whole UI to handle passphrases and pins and all that, all that other stuff that comes along with the keep key. So and then the same goes for any other type of wallet. And
yeah, so maybe
to me,
part of a
that's-
wallet implementation is going to creep in as UI dependency.
So I've encountered this problem getting my Exchange/HD wallet thing working on. I think that the best solution is to have callbacks for displaying the UI stuff that's required passed into the constructor for whichever key manager you'd be using. So you don't know ahead of time if the keep key requires a pin. I mean, you can pull up, is pin set, but you don't know if it's unlocked or not. All you know is that at some point, you have to support the user entering that information. So, and that information is going to have to be displayed and entered in a device-specific manner. In keep key, it's pin scrambled, but with Trezor, you got to go through Trezor Connect, and that means you have to display a particular iframe, and use a particular interface, and who even knows how you're going to do it. So it's definitely a device, or in this case, key manager specific operation. And so I don't think we can handle that reasonably on the wallet or the SDK in a more generalized case.
Yeah.
So I think we construct the key manager.
But there's problems with like the key manager at this level in this diagram. I don't think should have UI, because if it's a mobile app, the UI might need to be native code, right?
Right.
Rather than like a React HTML, whatever. So we don't want to embed it there either. So perhaps, could we support some type of like plugin system where it's like keep key, UI type package that you can essentially attach to the wallet, that like I know how to listen to keep key events and I can display these UI elements for this stuff.
Yes.
Plug
So
it in
you'd
that
have to
way.
That's where my mind went to.
Right. So instead of injecting the dependency at the key manager step, you'd inject it like as part of the SDK. I see that would probably make the developer experience easier. And then the
Yeah,
SDK would pass it down, and it would get handed to the key managers as.
Well, the opposite way, that we would bubble up events as opposed to passing it down. So key manager would emit events, right? Wallet would re-emit the events, and then the SDK would allow you to attach something that would attach to, like it would listen for those specific events based on the event number or whatever it is, right? And so they
I'm not
would bubble as opposed to
the event emitter paradigm. It's it's great when you have to work with web, and it was a good solution before promises were. But it seems to me that it makes a lot more sense to stick to the basic asynchronous primitive promises now.
Well,
So
this is an implementation detail.
So we're close to 4 o'clock. Hearing this, I was tempted to ask some of our stronger UI engineers if they had thoughts and wanted to weigh in here. Also want to take final opportunity here to thank, well, first to invite people to ask questions again or suggest a topic for next week. Volunteer a demo, ask if an idea you have is something that would fit into our demos next week, or anything else. Cool. Yeah, so we'll continue here. We'll be here all day. People are welcome to hang out. We're generally in like E1 all access or one of the engineering all access voice channels. And everyone's welcome to pop in on us there at any time. You may need a specific role in order to see those, like the engineering role.
Under the welcome section, everyone is able to view the role selector channel under the welcome section. You'll see a pinned post there with a number of emojis on it. And you just select the particular emoji reaction associated with the work streams that you want to follow, essentially, and you'll get the rooms over in the in your sidebar.
Well, that's fancy.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Nerdhair.
How did you
Yeah,
say?
so for those of you who are here, if you've subscribed to the engineering workstream group, any of the voice channels, if you see people in there and it's in a public channel, you can hop in if you want to. That's why they're public channels. So.
In engineering, anything with a megaphone next to it, public. Anything with an ear next to it, you can come in and listen. I honestly thought that was some sort of weird backwards 3 or something. Only figured out it was an ear today.
Linux Live. It's a perfect ear we're talking about.
It's not an SDR
I just got the latest Discord upgrade in Linux, and they've actually improved the icons.
Oh, really? I've been sitting on this update ready thing all day, so I'm going to have to go ahead and push the button.
Do that. Yeah. Yeah, so what UI guys have you got in here? I don't see.
Yeah, I'd like to get Doob's input, but no.
Yeah, or
where do you see him in another channel? I can ping him quick. Or him, Jam. I see Jam.
We are trying to get them to implement something today, so maybe leave them out unless we really need them in here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, so where you went with like a separate like UI interface, so to speak, or I think you called it plugin. Yeah. Imagine we're getting at the same thing, a way to specify like a common format for wallets to implement their interface that has that awareness of the specifics of, unlocking a device or anything else that's unique about that wallet interface that requires user interaction.
It would have to be key manager specific, but of course, so will
Correct.
at least a portion of the data in storage.
Say that again. Put a portion of the data in storage, like it's configuration data that it needs to drive itself.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
If let's say you have a keep key, that's going to get serious. You're going to pull the XPubs off the keep key and have it available for offline use, and wallet would be in charge of that part. And it would be generic over multiple key managers, presumably. But the keep key key manager itself might need to know what ID am I looking for, or perhaps what port am I talking to the fancy new keep key Python bridge thing that we're testing on, or something like that.
Oh, right. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So that would have to be stored in storage as well, but it wouldn't be wallet specific. It would be key manager specific. So I'm sort of imagining the wallet type being generic over the key manager, and then storing which type via a tag.
Yeah, so you have keep key wallet would extend wallet, which would have a type key manager of type keep key.
Right.
Keep key manager. Yeah.
I'm not thinking of like key wallet. I guess the wallet should be the device specific thing stuff. I imagine would be isolated to key manager.
No, I'm just saying that, like, see how wallet has a property of key manager, right?
Yeah.
So you would have a wallet bracket T that's implements key manager, and then you would pass in keep key manager, and so you'd have a wallet. So keep key wallet would essentially be a wallet that has a key manager that's of type keep key manager.
So I just happened to notice that Get TX history and Get balance are on chain client, and Get pub key and sign TX are on key manager. That's basically all of the functions. What does a wallet? Would it make sense to make a distinction? Say, okay, stuff in it, and the chain client has all the web touching stuff in it, and the wallet is just glue. Not even have a separate class for individual devices. Just a generic glue class that would delegate the functions.
So the functions that are listed here are very partial. Or you're asserting that Get pub key and sign TX is all a key manager would do anyway.
I'm just noticing that right now it happens to be true that the union of key manager and chain client creates a wallet, and I'm wondering if that continues to be true, then it would be awfully convenient, and we could just have one generic wallet class that you plug in clients and key managers into, and you wouldn't have to write new wallet code for that.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
Yeah, and the idea is that it continues to be a union of those. And if there were other requirements to be a wallet, I would propose probably a third interface in addition to key manager and chain client. If that keeps it to just like a single chunk of code that does the gluing. Yep.
So if I were a developer constructing an instance of SDK, I would need to feed it with the factories for the various key managers and chain clients and whatever instances of I need to do my dependency injection, essentially. I'd also need to feed it whichever UI plugins that I needed to for the various devices. So for like Keep Key, I'd have to feed it something that encapsulates the callbacks for pin and passphrase. And if I didn't do that, and I tried to dehydrate a key, key store is way overloaded. If I tried to dehydrate from storage and there was a wallet listed that had, a key manager associated, that might not work.
Right.
So, however, it would work in offline. I'm like key manager needs the UI, chain client. So you should always
fix
be able
your
to
audio.
do
You cut out way too much. Like I guess
Yeah,
a
I
lot
think-
at what I think you probably said.
that. Great.
If you go to the audio settings, oh, my Discord's all jacked up.
Yeah, I'll lower the threshold.
Automatic determine input sensitivity. I turn that off and then I manually set the threshold. Because it's always like moving up and down, and then if you start talking a little quieter, it cuts you off until it adjusts again. So I would turn off the automatic input sensitivity. That's
Hey,
how I
and
do
before we continue further, I want to call out one thing in relation to these interfaces and implementations of them. One of the primary drivers here is to support multiple wallet aggregators. So HD Wallet is a wallet, quote, wallet aggregator. It's really like a key manager aggregator.
Mhm.
Onboard JS is another one. And there'll conceivably be more than that.
MetaMask.
So we
Wallet
should be
Connect.
thinking, yeah, or I mean, things like MetaMask could be a key manager in HD Wallet.
Yeah.
In fact, it might be sometime soon.
Right.
MetaMask is supported via onboard, so you get the MetaMask support there as well. But yeah, I think we should think about it in terms of an aggregator being able to implement and plug into it, as well as potentially an individual specific wallet.
I can see a.
So it would be like get my total balance.
Wait, what?
So
No,
you're saying something like get my total balance, which would iterate through all of the wallets and return you.
Sure.
Is that what you mean by aggregator?
That would be a function of some higher level component that leverages the abstraction or the SDK we're talking about here, or maybe is a part of the SDK that sits on top of wallets and chain clients and key managers and such.
So I'm going to make
So
the
what do you
assertion.
mean by aggregator then?
I mean, if we add support for HD Wallet, we get support for KeepKey, Ledger, Trezor, the ShapeShift native wallet. We add onboard, we get support for MetaMask, and name your other onboard supported wallet. So it's like we're integrating an aggregator, a platform of its own, or an SDK of its own that supports multiple wallets. So I
you're
think
saying there could be an onboard JS key manager, which we have one key manager, but it would essentially give us support for like 6 different types of wallets.
Yes, and maybe
Okay.
that's just fine here. I just wanted to make sure we kept that in focus. So I
The
have
trick there is going to be that
HD Wallet
onboard.
key manager defined and onboard. Yes.
The trick there is going to be that when you run through the onboarding flow, you get to choose stuff like, I mean, obviously what the device is, but you also get to choose like derivation path and stuff like that. And that might go out of sync with whatever data is cached in, for the chain client to use. If we do that, we're going to have to make sure that we construct a new wallet if the user actually logs into a new wallet.
Yeah, same idea as
Well,
Portis, right? We tackled similar things on beta with Portis and changing wallets in the background.
So I'm going to make the assertion that.
And I just want to say one thing, because we're talking about rehydrating. Like, we have to determine whether or not something like onboard.js allows you to programmatically reconnect a wallet rather than always, if all we ever get is them popping up a thing that says connect a wallet and we don't have any control over that programmatically, then that's going to be very difficult, right, for us to be like, oh, you've got an onboard.js wallet, we're just going to reinstantiate it, because they're going to need to like click through the flow again. And all we can do is be like, oh yeah, we've seen that one before, or we haven't. We won't be able to like automatically reconnect that specific wallet. And I haven't used it, so I don't know, if that's possible.
So if you
So that's in use on our airdrop.
Yeah,
You
it
do.
remembers which wallet it is. So if I connect to my MetaMask and I go back to farming.fox, it remembers my MetaMask and we'll try to reconnect.
Oh, sweet.
And stuff like that. So you can test it out live on Fox, farm.fox or whatever the heck that link is, fox.farm or fox.shapeshift.
Fox.shapeshift.com.
We have too many URLs at this point.
I do think it's important to design the API in a way that accommodates a potential future key manager implementation that doesn't support that. But I do think that it would suck and probably provide a bad user experience. And I'm very glad Onboard has that functionality. So I'm going to assert that a wallet has a set of accounts, and that an account has a set of assets. Does that seem like a safe assertion?
Say it one more time.
Define account.
An account is, the definition is per chain. Practically speaking, on non-UTXO chains, it's m/44 prime / slit 44 prime / n prime /0/0. So it's that particular key. It generates this particular address. I mean, that's true on Ethereum. It's true on Cosmos and Thorchain. It's true on most things. On Bitcoin, an account consists of the whole subtree. But as far as the abstract design of the system goes, that's an implementation detail. If we were caring about it from a purely cryptography standpoint, an account would be the first three parts of the BIP44 path.
Right.
The hardware bit.
Okay.
But it's really chain specific, and a chain might define it to be differently if it's stupid and dumb.
It might define an account as something different than
actually,
a node
Bitcoin
in BHD path.
Bitcoin defines, SegWit accounts as having an 84 in the purpose field instead of, a 44. Right. And that's a different path. That's means they don't all fit that specific mold. But in general, each account, each chain has its own notion of what an account is, and each wallet can have more than one account potentially. At least we can design for that. I think it would be a mistake to couple too tightly to the notion of an account index. MetaMask has done that. I think it's a bit of a mistake, but the idea that your wallet has a set of accounts and each of those accounts has a balance. That's the idea. So in Bitcoin, you have many UTXOs and they're attached to many addresses, but it's only one account. So you total and display the balance on a per account basis. But you would never ask
the account being like an export in that case.
Yeah. But you'd never provide like a convenience function for sure. But it probably would be a mistake to take the balance of multiple accounts and add them, except for a specific reason. Like for a specific UI.
Like a user wanting to aggregate their savings and checkings accounts and show them in one balance chart.
Yeah, like we would want to show
a UI concern.
But the UI should have to pull those numbers and add them.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I don't know if it's still in the diagram, but I had like a combiner thing. So this similar thing came up before, and I had made a combiner there just to show that anything doing combinations across accounts or wallets would be at like another layer on top of what we're working on right now.
I also see that an account can have multiple types of assets. And so that it would have a specific...
Just to say, Do you mean
Sorry,
like
ETH or
tokens?
BNB
Like
or
what?
something.
Yeah, like it's really obvious on Ethereum, where you have Fox and ETH and Wrapped ETH and USDC and all this stuff. But it's also true on stuff like, so for Thorchain, for example, Thorchain only has one native asset in it, which is Rune. But you still have to specify that that's the asset in all in all Cosmos-based chains. You have to specify that as a field.
Thorchain actually has synths or will at some point here, so that's the
those
same
aren't
idea.
implemented. I don't. Oh, they are. Oh,
They
well,
were implemented. They were pulled, but they're coming back. Is the last I heard.
But also, there are other types of assets, like a CryptoKitty, right? So, like an NFT is an asset of which you have a balance of 1, right? But so your balance, your asset has a balance associated with it. The one thing that CAIP whatever does not include that is important for an asset. I mean, it's not the one thing, but it refers to a specific asset. But somewhere we're going to have to be able to look up, probably in the chain client, I'd guess, we'd have to be able to feed in what asset we would like metadata on, and it's going to have to give us what the precision is and what the symbol is and stuff like that. Symbol wouldn't be important to us for math purposes, but I imagine that the precision would be. Maybe, I'd like conceptually to delegate that completely to the UI, but I know that, for example, Binance, the SDK, the JavaScript SDK for Binance requires that you do the division by the precision before you hand the number off. So,
I mean, that's true of in most cases, right? You have to take the user readable representation of the quantity and turn it into the proper integer quantity for the asset you're working on. Anything that accepts a floating point number is just a convenience thing.
And I would love that convenience thing to be something the UI had to handle, and we just didn't touch with a 10-foot pole, but I don't think it's practical, unfortunately.
No, I agree with you. I've pushed at this before. Just everything's an integer. The only time floats matter is to humans. So let's keep it in the human realm and not confuse the hell out of ourselves converting things back and forth.
So I see a wallet as having a set of accounts, an account as having a set of assets, and or maybe asset balances or something like that, and that having a field for the asset ID and a field for an integer number. And that's just the number of the thing that you have, what you'd get if you called balance of. And that gives us enough information to be able to use that asset ID to pull the precision from a chain client or something else and do the math we need to. And
so we have an asset service in V2 today. Its responsibility is storing assets, finding them by different criteria, and storing attributes like precision. So I agree. It's an application level.
That should probably go in this mix somewhere. If I were writing a completely different, I don't know what we're going to call this project, but if I were writing an app, if I were writing AsgardX and I wanted to use, ShapeShift cool wallet-y thing 2.0, and I imported that library, I'd want all that information to come with it.
Mm-hmm. So Chain Adapters in its current incarnation uses this asset service I mentioned. So I imagine it could be used by Chain Client in a similar way. Sorry?
Isn't that like a table in the Axiom DB or something?
In beta, in centralized ShapeShift, it is, absolutely. In V2, it's maybe owned by us at the moment, maybe pulled from CoinGecko, CoinList, and things like that.
That'd be...
No, I think there's a process. I know Elmut was working on to ingest lists of coins from, I believe, the CoinGecko list. I know we were playing with Trust Wallet as well at one point. So what we need is like a trustworthy list that people aren't going to be able to put scam coins into our app and rob people, by us helping them.
Well, if somebody wants to put a scam coin in, that's sort of a UI problem as far as, I get it. It's
yeah, but we don't want to be in the business of deciding what's good and bad. Let's at least let a community process like a PR to a list tracked in GitHub do it.
Yeah, I'd like whatever